welcome to a live painting session with Robert McAfee. Thanks for stopping by and taking a few moments out of your busy day to hang out with me. Here I'm going to render an oil painting on a paperboard. Now, I know for many artists, canvases are the only way to work with oils, and it was the case for me for many years. But for this artist, there is a need to evolve and to experiment and try other things. I love to see what happens to textures and to the depth of color when I work on different surfaces. One of my favorite surfaces is working on birch boards. Well, any wood for that matter, but birch is a softwood and it absorbs the color beautifully. And I quickly learned that it absorbs it maybe a little too quickly, so the paint kind of tends to bleed a little bit. And that's where I learned the hard way. You know, the hard way is the only way for a lot of people. Myself, chief of that. However, I learned that it was important to seal boards before you actually render oil paintings on them. And so I understood that it also smooths the surface a little bit, but it retains some of the textures of the board. Well, the same is true for paper boards as I'm working with right here. A little bit of gesso goes a long ways. Painting on the bare surface, the untreated surface, the paint will absorb into the surface and will darken and lose a little bit of its luster, and it will take many layers to bring the really rich colors out of the paint. So in this case, as in many prior to this, I gesso the board with a light layer, which basically seals the surface, and sand it down a little bit, and then we're ready with a nice bright white surface to begin painting. Now this painting, I'm laying it out with a brush. In other words, instead of doing a pencil sketch first, I'm treating it as if I was en plein air, and let's just say that the weather might be a little on the inclement side, a little stormy, and my time frame is very short. In fact, that's the inspiration for this painting. You'll see that as I move along. But given a short time frame, I don't really want to take the time to pencil out the outline, so I use my brush and I use my mixture of quinacridone red mixed with a little Van Dyke brown and just a little tad of titanium white. And that gives me the dark surfaces, which are the outline of the far shore, which I am working on right now. Now, in the closer section, I use a little bit of yellow ochre mixed with titanium white and a tad of alizarin crimson. That gives me a warm tone to the foreground islands. And then with a little bit more titanium white mixed in, I'll do the far islands, which gives me that more brilliant orangey red in the distance. And that creates a layering effect or a depth so that you feel like you're looking beyond just the first islands and seeing into the distance. Now I like to occasionally go in with a little bit of direct, undiluted, unmixed color, and in this case, Azo orange, and just slash it into the surface, not trying too hard to resemble anything in particular. It could be rocks, it could be trees, it could be just pines or spruce, could be tamarack. It's really just to give a suggestion of what's there. I'm a firm believer in allowing the viewer to have some room for imagination. For me, just putting in a very basic painterly sketch is all that's necessary, because the viewer's mind is quite alive and ready to receive a palette that needs to be completed, and in their mind they can fill in the details. So now I'm taking a little bit of yellow ochre, mixing it with a little more titanium white to give it a little bit lighter of a tone to the islands, thus separating it from the hardness of the island rocks and trees, and also giving a little bit of reflection to the sky that you'll see develop further down the path here. I'm using a small brush. It's about a number 3 filbert, and as you can see, it's been used for quite a long time. The paint buildup on the handle is quite a mess, but I get attached to my brushes, and I love the way they work when I find one that really works for me, and I just keep living with it and I keep using it, and sometimes they just become greater tools with time. Now here I've mixed a little bit more azo yellow, azo orange, and titanium white into the water and applying it with the same brush, and the same brush because the paint that was on my brush before mostly worked out, but still some residue of it shows up in the current strokes. And I like that because that gives me what I call it continuity or harmony in the general colors of the painting. Now I'm just taking some azo orange and just really applying it in great volume. That way I can just smush it up and down and spread it with the brush and move it around, occasionally dipping into titanium white, getting a little bit of highlight, occasionally dipping it into my quinacridone red azo orange mixture, giving some reflection to the islands. It's water after all, but in this painting I'm depicting a little bit of movement in the water because the sky is going to be quite dramatic, and yet I want to reflect that sky. So what we do here is we just very gently allow for some texture, some rippling in the water, but not too much. This is when the storm is just beginning to build and the wind is just beginning to kick up. But I have a sense of what's coming and pre-planned that before I did the painting. So I'm putting a blocking in of colors that I know will work with the sky as it develops. Titanium white moving towards the lower section in the middle is focusing the viewer's eye towards the center of the painting. And now a little bit of this is a mixture of yellow ochre and a little bit of dark blue. Not much, just a tint. Comes out kind of a greenish blue. And that is going to darken the whole lower end and right and left side of the painting, which is basically going to focus your eyes towards the center of the painting. Slightly darker out around the edges. Slightly darker along the bottom. Moving towards a light center. Then you get this beautiful path for your eye to follow. I'll take a little bit of the dark zones that were in the island from my palette and just reflect the islands. When they're farther away like that, you won't get a long in-depth reflection. You'll just get a very shallow, narrow line, and that's what I'm doing here. I don't want the painting to be all about the big reflections. As you can see, I have lowered the horizon line to the bottom third of the painting because the sky is going to be the story of this painting. Now I'm moving to a number 8 filbert. This brush has a short handle on it, and I like it because I can use it on its side like this. As you can see, I like to wiggle the brush and get the various textures of the clouds, just wiggling the brush and just moving quickly, almost as if the clouds are being blown across the sky, as they would when a storm is approaching. With a longer brush you can do that, but I just like these little brushes. They're only about 6 inches long, and they're very light, and they move very freely. Now the colors that I'm using up here are basically Prussian blue, alizarin crimson, azo yellow, azo orange, mixed with titanium white. And we get these beautiful shades of color in the sky. I like those multiple colors because basically it creates an interest. The sky isn't just one or two colors, it's a conglomeration of colors. That's what the sky is, after all. When the clouds are shrouding the sun works very hard to beam through, and when it does, it creates these different glowing color zones. The thicker, deeper clouds, of course, will be darker. We'll use a little azo orange here to warm them up. In some paintings in the past, I've gone very dark in the skies, but in this particular one here, I want to have a little bit of balance. I don't want it to be a gloomy painting. I want it to have a little bit of hope, a little bit of excitement. The yin and yang, I guess you could say, of color, where the darker colors could overwhelm you, but if I use some titanium white and just kind of tap in some lighter clouds here, we're going to get a really nice balance of light and dark, and that creates a more pleasant, almost a joyfully intriguing color scheme. Let's just put it that way. You need a little mystery to keep things exciting, and so the dark serves its purpose, but the light keeps it becoming depressing or sad. In fact, it just makes it more exciting, more interesting to look at. And it's working out here. I'll use some of that color to minimize the dark areas just a little bit. Once again, trying to keep that balance of light and dark. Stroke over those dark areas with a little bit of light to give some texture to the clouds. We're getting near the end here. It feels good. It feels like the kind of a day where you're out and you're having a stroll along the lakeside, and those clouds start to move in, and you stop just to enjoy and feel the amazement of creation as it moves. And then get yourself inside as quickly as you can. It might get a little wet out here. I'll thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to hang out with me right here on my YouTube channel. Be sure to hit the like button and to share with others. Oh, and if you don't mind, I'd love to have you as a subscriber so that you can be notified of future works. Thanks for dropping in.